So my camera stopped recording at this part. I was not aware of that until hours after I thought I was done recording, so I apologize about that. At this part I was talking about how Vision hit Rhodey. He was aiming for the Falcon, but he missed. After that you see the Falcon fly down to Tony to give him his condolences, and Tony just no look hits him with the repulsor. That was pretty funny. After that, it is revealed to Tony that Bucky was in fact framed. So what he does is he goes to the water prison where Talbot's keeping Team Cap, and he asks the Falcon to tell him where they went, and he does. So he goes to Siberia, and to their surprise they find that Zemo has killed the other Winter Soldiers. I guess he doesn't want any more superpowered beings in the world. Anyway, what he does after that is he plays a tape that reveals that Tony Stark's parents were killed by Bucky back decades ago when he was still the Winter Soldier, a member of Hydra. And Tony lashes out at him with everything he's got. He was so angry, and Zemo kind of sneaks off while they're battling. He's met by T'Challa, who had been tracking Tony, and he's just kind of telling him about his accomplishments, how he's not even happy about it. That's the sad part. He's still like depressed about life, even though he just accomplished his goal of tearing apart the Avengers. And he tries to commit suicide, but T'Challa stops him. Even though that's the guy who killed his parents, he wants him to stay alive and face justice. So back with the fight, Tony, Cap, and Bucky have this epic battle. You know, Cap's trying to convince Tony he didn't know what he was doing, it wasn't him. And Tony does not care. He killed his parents. He didn't make peace with his parents before he dies, and now here he has the culprit, the man who's responsible for that, at his feet, and he just can't help himself. Tony winds up losing the fight. Cap and Bucky get the better of him, and what's really made this scene dramatic is while Cap is walking away with Bucky, he tells him that he doesn't deserve that shield, that it belongs to his father. And what really made it powerful was the fact that Captain America does not disagree. He drops the shield and leaves it with Tony. That made it very emotional. You could hardly tell they were acting. It was such a very intense scene. So that's kind of the big final climatic battle. After that you see that what Captain America does is he takes Bucky, who had his arm torn off in the battle, he takes him to Wakanda, where Black Panther will keep him in the cryogenic sleep state until they can figure out how to get like the Hydra brainwashing out of his mind. T'Challa sees that as a way of bringing peace to the death of his father, because he sees both his father and Bucky as victims. Back at the water prison, you have the Team Cap members still captive, and well, how the movie ends is like there's this letter that Cap writes to Tony. That's where you see the Stan Lee cameo. That's where you see him delivering the letter to Tony. He accidentally calls him Tony Stank. Anyway, in the letter, Captain America tells Tony about how he was sorry that he didn't tell him about his parents. And that's one thing I need to address. Some people will sit here and wonder, whoa, when did Cap find out that it was Bucky who killed Tony's parents? But the simple solution to that is like he and Falcon tracked Bucky down for 2 years, so it's not unimaginable to say that he found that information out while he was tracking him during those 2 years. That's very relevant information. It's not hard to believe that he would have found that out during that time where he was looking for Bucky. Anyway, so he tells him that he's sorry that he didn't tell him. He could see now that he wasn't really protecting Tony, but he was protecting himself. And he goes on to say that whenever Tony needs him, he'll be there. And the movie ends where you see Tony outside of the cells of the Team Cap members. He's about to break them out. And that's the end of the movie right there. So there's 3 or 4 characters rather that I want to talk about. Spider-Man, Black Panther, Zemo, and Ant-Man. So Spider-Man in this movie, I can't really say that I was too happy that they decided to go with the amateur Spider-Man. But what they were going for with the amateur Spider-Man was they were separating themselves from the graphic novel Civil War. They made that clear by using that decision. You know, in the comics, Spider-Man was a grown man in Civil War. He had been Spider-Man for years. They chose to use Spider-Man in this movie when he was only Spider-Man for 6 months, which just goes to show how much they want to make that separation and distinction. Another way they did that was with the Sokovia Accords. In Civil War, the comic, it was the Superhero Registration Act where it applied to every super being in all of America. This is just the Avengers. So even if Tony hadn't brought Spider-Man into the battle, the Sokovia Accords would have had no effect on him because he's not an Avenger. Which is why he doesn't exactly need a pivotal role in this movie. He doesn't need a lot of screen time because it's not about him. This movie was just a way to introduce him into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and set him up for his Homecoming movie, which he will have with Iron Man. And I guess that's the last after credits scene is of him in his room. I guess he has this like communicator thing that he uses to contact Tony, and that's kind of how they're setting that up. Black Panther. Black Panther. Black Panther is a G in this movie, people. He was so strong. Even after his father died, he became the king and handled everything with such confidence. Like, I talked about this in my comic book movie, how there's this movement to create more diversity in the superhero genre. And up until now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, all black superheroes have been the sidekick to some white guy. So I can tell you that that's why they went out of their way to make Black Panther such an admirable character in this movie, such a confident, independent character. So I was really glad to see that they had done that. It was really important that they did that for like the future of the superhero genre. Zemo. Zemo, you could argue that Zemo is one of the greatest villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He has no powers at all whatsoever, and he single-handedly tore apart the Avengers from the inside. That's something that Loki in the first Avengers movie failed to do. The God of Mischief couldn't even do. And the fact that he did it in such a short amount of time, it didn't take him years. He did it only since the event. I guess actually it has been years since Age of Ultron, I'm not sure actually. But still, it's a great feat that he was able to do that. And it wasn't like he was trying to take over the world or anything. His sole mission was the destruction of the Avengers, and he was able to achieve that. He said earlier in the movie that with patience and some other quality, you can do anything, and he proves it. So yeah, I could definitely see someone saying that he's one of the greatest Marvel Cinematic villains ever. He doesn't commit suicide. Black Panther stops him, so I can't wait to see what they do with him further in the Marvel Cinematic Universe down the road. Ant-Man. I love Ant-Man in this movie. I was kind of disappointed in the first Ant-Man movie when he didn't become Giant Man, but they delivered in this movie in the parking lot brawl when they had him become 50 feet tall. That was epic. It threw me back to watching Ultraman on 4Kids. I love that show. Another thing I find noteworthy about Ant-Man is the fact that he joins Team Cap pretty willingly without any doubt. He had a lot of conviction. And even though he never met Captain America, now granted he was a criminal before, so obviously he's not going to really care that he's even more of a criminal after joining Team Cap, but his willingness to follow Cap in the battle just shows how righteous people see Captain America, how worthy his cause is. Captain America is just that guy that you can always trust is doing what he's doing for the right thing. Last thing I want to talk about is the fact that nobody dies. Everybody thought that someone was going to die in Civil War. I was one of those people. I thought it would either be Rhodey because of the trailer, obviously, Cap because he died in Civil War. Again, they're separating themselves. Or Tony. Turns out nobody dies, and I'm not sure why they would do that. I can see from a money standpoint, keeping actors that everybody loves, like Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. would play a part in that. Hugh Jackman's about to stop playing Wolverine. Like, watch how many fangirls stop seeing X-Men movies just because Hugh Jackman's not playing Wolverine anymore. So from a money standpoint, I can see why they did that. But within the context of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and their plot, I am not sure why they would keep everybody alive. So if you have any idea about that, comment on it below. I took a college class this semester, a comic book literature class, where I learned to look at superhero media more analytically, and I can see that there were a few themes present in this movie, like one being the Avengers themselves. I think they kind of act as some kind of allegory to the United States and how we kind of act like a world police, intervening in countries where we may or may not be wanted. I read this article that talked about how Bucky is supposed to represent the poor treatment of veterans in society and the stigma attached to people with mental health. There's all kinds of themes that are present in. Last thing I want to address is the fact that nobody dies. I kind of expected someone to. I was one of those people that thought someone would, whether it would be Tony or Captain America. Shit.